Hey, what's up guys, and in today's video we're going to be going over the complete full setup guide for the Canon R6 Mark II. We're going to be going over the photo and video settings so you can actually see how I set my camera up. So you're going to want to make sure you follow to the end of the video so you actually don't miss any important settings, so you can actually set this camera up the best way for you. Okay, so going straight onto the photo menus, the first thing I always change is I always shoot in RAW, and sometimes I do shoot in JPEG large as well, but I am at the minute only because I actually want to test out this camera as much as I can at the minute because I've only just got it. But all the time I shoot in RAW and then sometimes JPEG. So the JPEG is just up to you really. Depends if you want to get like a quick social media post out there or anything like that. But if you shoot in RAW, you're going to get the most out of your photos, out of your sensor, and you'll have way more room in post when you actually do edit your photos. Go down to dual pixel RAW. I got to admit, I'm not sure what this actually is and I've never used it before, and I don't think I'll plan on using it, maybe the odd time. And then cropping aspect ratio, I always have this on full. You can either go to a 1.6 times crop, a 1:1, 4:3, or a 16:9, but I always shoot in full frame because why buy a full frame camera if you're not going to shoot in full frame? Digital teleconverter as well, I'm not sure how you get this, let's see why. It's because of the image quality. Maybe if I take it out of RAW, there you go. If you take it out of RAW, then you can either have a ×2 or a ×4 digital teleconverter, which is kind of cool, not the best. I don't think I'll ever use this, but it's there if you do want it. Moving on to the next one is exposure compensation. And this is just, I'll leave this at normal because I've set my exposure normal. You go to ISO speed settings. I've literally just got this at the same auto range because I'm not really in auto much. ISO speed range, you can change all this, but I'm literally just in the normal settings for this, but it's up to you if you want to change this. I'm still learning this camera myself, and you've got HDR mode on or off. So for a moving subject or dynamic range, at the minute I'm just keeping all of these at the off menu. Auto lighting optimizer as well. I'm on to just keep all these at disable, and highlight tone priority, I just keep this as disabled. The next one, anti-flicker shoot. You've got this on the quick menu as well. External speed light control. Obviously, if you've got a flash speed light, that's when you'll actually use this. And then metering mode, I've got evaluative metering on at the minute. Obviously, this just depends on like the situation or what you actually want to use it for. Moving on to the next one, white balance, I have this set at auto at the moment. But if I was going to choose one, I would obviously pick which one it was at the time, either daylight, shade or whatever, or I'll just use the actual Kelvin number to actually change my Kelvin number for my white balance. Again, custom white balance, the only really annoying thing about Canon is you actually still have to get a white piece of paper to set the white balance, which is a bit stupid. And then white balance shift, I change its normal. Color space, at the minute I've got it at sRGB. Picture style, I just set it as standard for my JPEGs. And then clarity, I don't touch any of that. I don't touch any shooting creative filters because I shoot in RAW. Lens aberration correction, I've just left this at normal for distortion and that. Actually, I think this is off and I actually turned this on. Then the same for long exposure reduction. I've got this to auto, and high ISO speed, I've got to standard. Does delete data, I'm not sure what that does to be fair. And then multiple exposure, all of these are disabled. Raw burst mode, I think this is when you can shoot continuous shots in RAW. This is how you actually turn on pre-shooting, which actually, once you actually press the shutter button, it will actually shoot 0.5 seconds before. And then drive mode, at the minute obviously you've got single shooting, high speed continuous. If you're in the electronic mode, you can go up to 40 frames per second. In mechanical it goes up to 12 frames per second. Obviously you've got self timer 10 seconds, 2 seconds, and an actual continuous one as well. So I think you can set the time, which on my EOS R you couldn't do that. But at default I've just got it as single shooting. Interval timer, this is obviously where you can actually do your time lapse. If you enable this, you change the intervals, and that's when you obviously get your time lapse. Silent shutter function, this is good for like events, so the shutter will be silent, and I think this is only in the electronic mode. So if you do want to be very, very discreet, that's when you'll turn it on. Shutter mode, apparently I've got it in electronic at the minute because I think I was doing a test. Electronic first curtain and mechanical. At the end of the day, it's up to you really. It depends on how fast you're, like how many frames per second you actually want when you actually are taking it. And then at the minute I've got release shutter without card on, only because I was getting some tests when I was actually checking the actual speed and I didn't want it to write to any of the cards. So that's why I was actually got that on at the minute, and I just keep that on really. Image stabilizer mode, I've got it on. Digital IS, I have off, and then still photo IS, I've got always. Touch shutter, I've got this at disabled because I think it's more of a hassle than anything else. And then image review, I have this off as well because I just want to take my shots. I don't want to keep looking at the pictures because I think you look 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 8 seconds. Like, I don't want that 2 second gap. I just will review them in post later, or just on the camera like 5 minutes later when I'm just going through the photos. A metering timer, I've just got this as default 8 seconds. Display simulation, I've just got exposure. Shooting info display, I've just like left this, or the only thing I've changed here I think is vertical display on, and grid display. I've put that to the actual rule of thirds grid just because it helps me compose better, and I just prefer it being there. Histogram, I've got as brightness and large, and then lens info display in manual focus. And another really cool thing that I love is the focal length display. So if you actually go back right now, as you can see in this bottom corner here, it's got the 50mm because I have a 50mm lens on. So this will be really helpful if you have, like, for example, zoom lens and you want to see what focal length you're at without actually looking at the lens. VF display format, I've got this at display 1, display performance. I've just got it on power saving. AF operation, I always change between one shot and servo. I think this is new, AI focus, which will be pretty cool to actually test out. But at the minute, I've actually got one shot and servo. I've actually custom mapped the set button to change from one shot to servo at the minute. However, I am always changing these settings, so they might not stay for that long. AF area, I've just got 1 point AF at the minute. Whole area tracking servo AF, I've got on. Subject to detect, I've got auto. Now it's cool to have people, animals, vehicles, but I tested it yesterday. I latched onto a person's eye, I latched onto my cat's eye, and I was in auto. So I'm just going to keep this in auto, to be fair, because I think of how actually good the autofocus is in this camera. Eye detection, I've got auto as well because I don't want it disabled, only if I really don't want it disabled, but I've got that as mapped as a custom button again. And you can actually change between the right eye and left eye, and I'm pretty sure if you use the joystick you can change that anyway. That's why I've got it as auto. Switching track subjects, I've just got one, left it the same. Focus mode, I'll change this on the lens. The only time I'll use this is for the 50mm because it doesn't have a dedicated focus mode switch. Servo AF, I've got this on auto. I've not really digged into deep of these, to be fair, but I actually think they're pretty cool. So I've just got this as auto again at the minute. One shot release prior, I've just kept this whatever this normal setting was. Preview AF, I've got disabled. Touch and drag AF, I've got off at the minute. That is a very helpful use, to be fair, but I just use the joystick at the minute as well. If I was going to use it, it would be on the right hand side. Again, I'm not really gone into any of these. Manual focus peaking settings. Now I'd have this off at the minute, but I will have this on, and I will actually map a custom button to this. So if I do have it on, which I will do when I am videoing mainly, I have it on high and I have the color on red. But obviously if I'm shooting something red, I'll change the color. Focus guide, I've actually got off because when I am in manual it comes on anyway. Movie servo AF, I've got enable. Going over to the last one, electronic full-time manual focus, I've just got off. Lens electronic, I've got off again. I've not touched any of these settings. I'm not really going to go over any of these settings, playbacks really, because unless I see one that's actually important to me. Shutter at shutdown, I have this at closed. Every time I change lenses, turn my camera off because I don't want anything getting onto the shutter, so I always have that on closed. If we actually go to the customizable buttons, the ones I have changed is at the minute I've got AF on to one shot and servo apparently. So the one, when I set that to that, I need to change it. I didn't even realize I changed that. So I'll have it on AF on. You can do back button focus, but I mainly use the shutter for that anyway. And I thought having two reasons to actually focus two different ways, I thought that was a bit pointless, to be fair. So I've changed that to AF on. I may as well show you my video ones as well. I've got face track, I've got this eye detection AF, like I mentioned. If I want eye detection on, I can just press this button here and it'll actually change like it for me. At the minute, I think that's all I've changed there. But the dials, I've got the top to shutter speed, the back to ISO, and the wheel to aperture. And then at the minute I've got that as my Kelvin because I don't really know what else to use the control ring for. And if you want to see what I've got on my menu, I've got raw burst mode, like I mentioned earlier, in case I want to try it out. Silent shutter, if I'm in a situation, for example, where I need to be discreet, it's there, quick and easy. If I want to change my shutter mode so I can change my FPS very quickly, I've got that there as well. High frame rate, because if I want to, I'm in video and I need to change obviously to 100 frames per second or 150 frames per second. That's where I can change that quickly. On number 2, I've got false color, HDMI raw output, and then that is it at the minute. So they're my full photo settings at the minute. Again, I'll constantly be changing these all the time, but let's actually talk about the video features now or the video settings, I should say. So straight into the menu, this is where you got your movie recording. Unfortunately, this camera can't do all eye information like my Canon EOS R did, but I don't think that's a big enough deal, to be honest. Like, I don't think a lot of people, the majority of people, would notice. So I've actually got, here is, I use 4K 25, 4K 50, and when I change to high frame rate mode, which I'll do right now, I use either 100 or 150, really. Probably 150 to get more slow-mo. So, but I have that disabled all the time unless I really want to use that. Movie cropping enabled can be handy sometimes, but I've got that as disabled, so it's digital zoom. And sound recording I have at manual, because in case, I've got to admit, a lot of times I forgot to plug in my mic in, so I don't like the camera's audio at all. So I do set this to manual in case I do really need the camera's audio, it's not peaking too much and you don't lose enough quality. So I have this down here, really wherever you want to set it at. So I have it peaking at around, like, as you can see where I'm talking now, 12. If I start talking really loud, it will actually not even hit 6 really. So, and I'm literally right next to the camera, so that's why I want it at that. Moving on, all of these are disabled, I think, and I think there's a reason why that I'll show you in a minute. ISO speed settings, again, I've changed the same. All of these I don't really touch at all, and that is because these are pretty cool. You can change like the aperture in 1/8 instead of just one stop at a time all the time, which is pretty good. But I have that disabled. But white balance, now I have it as auto if I'm just running gunning. But if I'm doing a proper professional video, this is where I'll actually change more of the Kelvin number, so I can actually like properly dial in my white balance. And then no picture style, because I use Canon log, and I always use this because I want to get the most dynamic range out of my camera as I possibly can. And the view assist I actually have on, and then the color space I have cinema gamut. Yeah, I always shoot in log, which means clarity I don't touch. Shooting creative filters I don't touch. This is the exact same as the photo settings and pre-recording. Now I might actually use this now and again, because you can record up to 5 seconds before you've actually pressed a button. So if you find something very quickly and you actually want to, like in a sport for example, and you're not recording, as long as you've obviously got your camera aiming at the thing, like the actual subject itself or whatever's going on, when you press that button, it will actually already be recording for 5 seconds. So that's actually really good. But at the minute I've got that off. Movie self timer, I've got this off as well. At the minute I'll turn it on if I want. Image stabilization mode I've got on. Digital I have off. If I actually on, I think enhanced crops it in, so I'll just have all that off apart from normal image stabilization. Quick controls like I mentioned earlier. Shutter button function for movies. Now I'm actually having this on. If you fully press it, it should start and stop the movie recording. I want to do that because I got to admit, I think the Canon R6 Mark II cage covers the record button a bit, because I know that does it on my EOS R and it's really annoying. So if I can actually change that to fully pressing it and it'll actually start the movie recording, I'll never have to use the really red recorder button again. So that's really simple and easy to use. Meter and timer, I've just kept this the same. Apparently if you have log, you can't do the false color, so I'll have to actually have a look into that, because that'll be a little bit annoying if you can't. Zebra settings, like I said, I've got it on, and I've got a zebra level 1 70% and 2 100%. So yeah, just to see if you're overexposing the highlights. Shooting info display, the grid again, this histogram is there. Lens to info display is enabled again. Aspect marker can be pretty cool. So if you actually know you're going to be shooting like anamorphic or 9:16, like if you want to actually shoot for vertical as well, you can put this on, and as long as you're in that aspect marker, so if I just put on 9:16, you can see it's already there. Because I've got the grid on, it's not really going to make a difference. I can just look through the grid like that and I know that guy is going to be in the vertical video. HDMI raw output, now this I think is because if you want to shoot in 6K raw but you do need a Ninja Atomos to do that, I think that's what that means anyway. And then also you got all these time code settings as well if you actually want to do the time code. Moving on to the AF, movie servo is normally on. Subject detect is detect priority. I've not really used or tested out only yet, but this is on priority. I'll obviously change that if I don't want it at priority. AF area, again, I can just change this in the quick settings. Subject to detect auto, again. Eye detection auto, again. All of these are the same basically as photo settings. Movie servo AF speed, always on, and you can actually change it to fast or 1. I want it quite fast, and then servo AF track if you want it unlocked on or responsive. I've got this at 0 at the minute. Touch and drag off, again, it's literally the same basically as the photo settings on the AF. So that's it. That's actually my main settings for the Canon R6 Mark II at the minute. But all the main important ones I think that actually are really important to change, to be fair, like RAW mode, like the log settings. But I hope you did actually find this video a little bit helpful, because I know it can be daunting sometimes going into a camera's menu system, and when you actually don't know everything, like I gotta admit, I don't know everything to do with this camera settings in and out. I just change the main things that I think will actually be helpful for me, and the main ones that will really actually have an impact. I think all the rest are something to actually dig deep in over the years when you actually do have this camera, because I'd imagine it will be years after you actually buy it, and I just think it will actually be more important to actually learn the basics and the main camera system settings first over the little small ones like AF speed, for example, because at the end of the day, that's only like personal choice. So if you actually do play around with the settings like that to actually find what you prefer, then that's the best way to do it. But if you did enjoy, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I'll see you guys on the next one. See you later.